You're here, and please come through, come in your numbers. We're going to be having such a heavy, great conversation tonight. I know you can't wait, right? You can't wait because this one is a hot one. Can I tell you today, I literally tried to get hold of Afare Marapin, and I'm like, come over, brother, and explain what are these sanctions all about? And Rutendo Matiere is where you guys were running, rampaging, and lying about these Zidero sanctions, and all of a sudden, you've been left naked. Do you also recall that there was a time Rutendo Matiere was moving in town, holding some placard with some guys there, you know, with like 3-4 ladies? I remember that. Lying, guys. Sylvester, good to see you. Come over, guys. Let's have a heavy conversation tonight. This one is a serious one. We cannot play games. We have to have a conversation. Ambassador of Peace, good to see you. Guys, we're going to drop where you're watching us from. Don't forget to like the live. You must also not forget to make sure that at least you drop your blue hearts, please. Very important. Stanley, good to see you, man. Good to see everybody. Come through. Come through, brothers and sisters. Let's have a heavy conversation. I think you've seen the title. We need to sort this out once and for all. Because I know, Deborah, good to see you, man. Good to see you. And thank you so much, guys, for coming through. Thank you so much. So in the interim, while I'm waiting for all the people to come through, we're going to just go in there and play our intro music because it is such a very strong music, very powerful song, which we know, very prophetic song, really speaking to the future, that we are very close to meet together in Zimbabwe. ZANU PF is finally exposed. It's sad, humiliating, embarrassing. I was literally waiting for them to come through earlier on and try to defend what's going on right now, but they can't. They cannot because they're definitely exposed. Yeah, I've never seen people feeling so lost in a way that it is right now. So please take a listen. Yeah. Good to see everybody, please. Good to see everyone, please. Yeah, that's the one there. Good to see everyone. Okay, guys, good to see everyone. And thank you so much for coming through. Hi, Tinasha, good to see everyone. Bro, Mike, good to see you. I know you're all, but you can't wait to be home. You know, you can't wait now. I understand. You know what I mean? I do. All right, guys, good to see everyone. And I just want to say welcome to Rumbi Uncensored. And if it's your first time, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and make sure that you ring the bell. By the way, I'm going to remind you again to subscribe to my other channel. It's called Now with Rumbi. Please go in there and just subscribe because very soon we're going to be dropping quite a lot of content there. We're busy shooting and preparing. So please go in. You can't wait to be blessed once again. And also, please, while you're here, almost 100 people, make sure that you just like the live because we need to push algorithms so other people can join us. So I need 100 likes, like in the next 20 minutes. So I think I've got 93, I already have 15 people. So God, rush, guys, like the live, Let's move on. Let everybody join us so we can have a conversation. And I want to say once again, you're welcome and good to see everybody. Okay, so today is a it's a good day. I'm not going to lie. It's a good day. Yeah, it is a big day, actually. I know for many years, for decades, we have been lied to, played by evil people. That's how I'm going to say it. Played, for fools. Like we didn't know what we were doing. Every time there were lies about the issue of ZADC sanction. I'm going to focus more on the ZADC part. And I didn't even know that ZADC wasn't even a sanction at all. And I wish Rutendo, shout out. I know how much you worked so hard. Try to convince Zimbabweans that ZADC was a sanction. I've never seen such an embarrassment today. Wow. Yeah, guys, listen. I don't know if we are ready to have a conversation in the country. I wonder why people were not prepared to have a conversation. Now it makes sense because they knew that truth will come out. The truth will simply come out. I want to start here. Where I'm going to start is by you guys listening to America itself. They had an incredible presser today. They realized that they are tired of lies. Every time they have to be accused for one way or the other. When these sanctions were imposed 2 days ago, there were still speculations of lies again. I've heard some of my ZANU PF, counterparts lying to Zimbabweans and try to convince us that because the president and some of his leaders, which is the vice president, his wife, and the president, also the commissioner, Police Commissioner, which is Godwin Matanga, we have Opam Chinguri, and Kudeta Gray. They can even the economy in Zimbabwe. And they came out today, gun blazing. They said, we have had enough. Furious. I'm not going to tell you lies. They were furious. And once and for all, we can clear this mess. So take a listen, please, to America. They're very serious. They mean business. Take a listen.
And thank you for your attendance. I would like to address U.S. government announcements on March 4th regarding U.S. sanctions on individuals and entities in Zimbabwe. The United States is committed to upholding core. We have expressed and continue to have concerns regarding serious cases of human rights abuses and corruption in Zimbabwe. On March 4th, President Biden signed an executive order terminating the Zimbabwe sanctions program, which has been in effect since 2003. That same day, the U.S. Department of the Treasury, Office of Foreign Assets Control, or OFAC, designated 11 individuals and 3 entities for their engagement in corruption and human rights abuses under the Global Magnitsky Human Rights Accountability Act. The United States is committed to ensuring our sanctions are timely, relevant, and targeted against individuals responsible for corruption and serious human rights abuses. In Zimbabwe, we continue to witness gross abuses of political, economic, and human rights. The targeting of civil society and severe restrictions on political activity have stifled fundamental freedoms, while key actors, including government leaders, have siphoned off government resources for personal gains.
For personal gains.
Sanctions on these individuals and entities do not represent a sanction on Zimbabwe or its public. The United States reaffirms its commitment to working with the people of Zimbabwe. This sanctions transition makes clear what has always been true. U.S. sanctions are not on the country of Zimbabwe. We are refocusing our sanctions on specific and clear individuals and entities. We continue to urge the government of Zimbabwe to take concrete steps to more open and democratic governance, including addressing corruption and protecting human rights. With that, I'll take a few questions.
The man in the red hat.
Thank you.
Can you introduce yourself, name, and locate your affiliation?
Thank you. My name is My question is, I think most people have
Why now? This seems to be changed since the last review. I'm noting the human rights abuses, the corruption. So why now? Why the change now, specifically?
Thank you for that question. President Biden has determined that the authorities in the executive order that he signed that implements the Global Magnitsky Human Rights Accountability Act is the best approach to address human rights and corruption concerns in Zimbabwe. The United States has made regular adjustments to the previous, now terminated, Zimbabwe sanctions program, including adding and removing individuals based on available evidence. U.S. sanctions are not intended to be permanent. Our sanctions are most effective when they're up to date and reflect realities on the ground. And that's why we've made the change at this time.
Next question. Yes?
Thank you very much. My name is Zino. I'm from State of the Nation News. I just want you to give us maybe an overview of how effective has been the sanctions policy in Zimbabwe, especially on targeted individuals. Let me give you a little bit of context. The sanctions on Zimbabwe were introduced in the early 2000s, and one of the individuals who happens to be still on the list is President Mnangagwa. Back then he was the minister, but right now he's the president of the whole Zimbabwe. How have the sanctions been effective to ensure that he improves human rights records in Zimbabwe?
Thank you for the question. And yes, the 11 individuals and 3 entities sanctioned under the global, their flagrant human rights abuses and corrupt behavior. U.S. policy, our policy has not changed. Our policy on Zimbabwe supports the citizens in Zimbabwe and its democratic institutions. That has not changed. But this is a shift in approach.
Good to see you, Tawanda.
But it's consistent in our focus on corrupt actors and human rights abusers. U.S. sanctions are not intended to be permanent. One of the primary goals of U.S. sanctions is to bring about positive changes in behavior. That might take time. But we encourage the government of Zimbabwe, including members of the government named in these March 4th designations, to take concrete steps toward democratic reforms that they themselves have said that they seek. Next question.
Thank you. My name is Captain Soro. I'm a freelance journalist. Are we likely to see the review of ZADC as a way of encouraging proper re-engagement between Washington and Harare? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think it's an important one that many people are asking. The Zimbabwe Democracy and Economic Recovery Act has not changed, but ZADC is not a sanction. We've never invoked ZADC to oppose international financial institution loans or debt restructuring. ZADC outlines a clear roadmap for government of Zimbabwe to access concessional financing and possible debt restructuring. But this could only happen once the government of Zimbabwe has paid its outstanding debt arrears to the international community. Messaging on ZADC might be catchy, but ZADC is not the problem.
Right.
ZADC is not the cause of Zimbabwe's economic troubles. Decades of economic mismanagement and widespread corruption are, and they have directly caused lasting economic impacts. Next question.
In the yellow dress.
Thank you so much. My name is Marol. There have been reports that the sanctions have aided corruption in Zimbabwe because the authorities of individual governments left the sanctions. They try to pass sanctions using, a lot of things. How effective would this be sanctions from the individuals who have been put under sanctions? And how will it aid in, trying to solve the issue of corruption?
Thank you for the question. We will see. I think any assessment on the new approach should be based on the nature of the designations rather than the number of designations. Global Magnitsky is intended to target recent or ongoing behavior. So it's to encourage a change in that behavior. The designations announced under Global Magnitsky target senior officials and private sector actors presently connected to corruption and human rights abuses and we will pursue further action as necessary and appropriate.
Final question? The hand here. Sir?
Wallace from the Euro newspaper. You tentatively said there are no sanctions on the people of Zimbabwe, but how is that so when you face the Zimbabwe?
Thank you for the question. There are no sanctions on Zimbabwe or its public. I think it's important to realize that the security and the prosperity of a country is not dependent on one individual alone.
Right.
And the 11 individuals and 3 entities that are now sanctioned under Global Magnitsky have been determined to be responsible for corruption and human rights abuses. But I want to leave you with this. We see this as an opportunity. We know it's an opportunity. We see it as an opening. This is an opportunity for the government of Zimbabwe to make good on the democratic reforms that it says it's committed to. We see it as an opportunity for business to have a new look at Zimbabwe. It was hard under a previous program titled the Zimbabwe Sanctions Program to get away from perceptions that you could not do business in Zimbabwe. That's not true.
Wow.
And so that we hope that business and financial institutions and investors have a new look to relationship between the people of the United States and Zimbabwe, so that all 16 million people here have the opportunity to prosper. Thank you for your questions.
Yeah, I'm even more than furious, actually. I'm more than furious. I think this is one of the reasons why whenever people are trying to understand how this country functions, you put yourself in danger. Like people always say, no, whenever you speak up, you put your life in danger. Not anymore. That will never happen. God will not allow it. It is enough. You know, people have to draw a line in the sand and say, we have heard enough. We really have heard enough. I cannot even begin to fund them. That all along we've been lied to. Rutendo Matiarare, where are you? Where are you now? I can't wait for him to rebut on this because he has been at the forefront, lying. Zidera, every time it was Zidera. Zidera, Zidera. What a lie. It's sad. It's very disappointing, really. People have been suffering in the country and the truth was out there. And I also ask you a question, I'm like, where were you guys, like United States? Why didn't tell us what was happening? Because we were believing everything that we could hear. I guess I'm so glad that this is a different season. And I'm going to tell you why it's a different season. People can see it. That's why I'm always referring to the tribe of Issachar. One of the characteristics of the tribe of Issachar was that they understood times and seasons. And that's what ZANU PF can't see. They're thinking the abuse they've been doing over the years, for decades abusing the people of Zimbabwe, manipulating them, threatening them, harassing them, is going to carry on. It won't carry on. It is the end. Yeah, now the truth is out. Everyone knows. How are you going to lie? We expect service delivery. We expect peace in the country. We expect respect of freedom of speech. Enough with the lies. Enough with all these funny laws. You know, just to keep truth. It is enough. And I'm so glad that America came out and really cleared it. The way this guy was upset, I think he had realized that, no, people are not willing to speak truth to power. You know, they keep on wanting to lie around the sanction thing. Because I actually heard some people say, as long as the president, the vice president, and also some of these leaders, the ministers, commissioner, are still sanctioned, and then the people of Zimbabwe are sanctioned. But here they are. You have heard them say, no, it does not affect Zimbabwe. These are simply individuals and their businesses that they run. Like if I'm running my business, how is that going to affect Zimbabwe? You know, and by the way, I'm also want to ask, because my understanding is that a president of a country cannot just run a business. You know, I think there should be laws, or there are laws currently that kind of protecting a president to directly run a business. But you know, there's always this Kudakta great guy who's always at the forefront. We've heard these people speaking about it all the time. You know what I mean? I do recall last time when, you know, Wachika General was caught with the issue of the scandal of the $5 million US for Kotko, that immediately he was talking anyhow in parliament. And you saw him. He was arrested. He was given his passport. He flew out of the country. People were like, how did this happen? Yeah, you know, but this is exactly why things are happening. You have not hearing truth, all of us. Zimbabweans are wiser. I don't know how people are going to hide. How are they going to hide anymore? You know? Everyone is watching. But the men of the tribe of Issachar had a deep understanding of their times. According to 1 Chronicles 12:32, understanding their times meant they knew precisely what Israel ought to do. They were divinely endued with the wisdom of comprehend what God was doing and what they needed to do to align themselves with Him. It's the season that we're in, Zimbabweans. We need to understand what God wants us to do. This is why people are silent in Chamisa whenever I speak scriptures, because they know that's where the power lies and truth lies and light lies, inspiration lies, enlightenment lies. But we are going to speak scriptures because we know when God leads us, we will never fail. And unfortunately, liars are exposed. Where are you going to hide? I also heard that their accounts are going to be frozen in the United States of America. Liars have been exposed. And I told you last time that all the monies that are stuffed in foreign lands will come out. Eventually, Zimbabweans are going to finish this country. Roads are messed up. Projects are being started and people just live there. I remember when Ruvenik was asking a minister, the Minister of Roads, you know, why do you always start work and then you never finish? And he was running around the place. He wasn't even telling the truth. It is sad, but the season of lying is gone. Yeah, brothers and sisters, the season of lying is gone. Now you are surrounded. You turn to the left, truth is there. To the right, truth is there. You sit down, truth is there. Where to from here? But I want you guys to also take a listen to Kasukuwere. He said, I think the season that we are in is actually for President Emmerson Mnangagwa to introspect. I also heard today, Promise Mukwaran said, we will do everything in our power to make sure that President Emmerson Mnangagwa will never get a third term. If that's what he's pursuing, this is a Promise Mukwananzi. He said, we are vehemently opposed to this bid for a third term. We will do everything possible to stop him and to defend the sanctity of the country's supreme law, the Constitution, in order to foster an entrenched a culture of respecting and honoring our Constitution and the rule of law in our country. The fact that Shavangu can wear a yellow tie in Parliament, which was banned by both Parliament and the High Court, is an insult to the integrity and the honor of our institutions and our people. But that's what happens if you belong to a certain group. You can do as you please. If you are literally, you know, when you're bootlicking a certain group, a certain elites, a certain corrupt community, you do as you please. You know what I mean? If you are busy twerking, you know, it's not acting like it's a brothel where you can twerk for the highest bidder and you walk away with wrong. You know, it's definitely turned out to be like a brothel. You know, you twerk for the highest bidder. You can get away with anything, anything. But for those that are standing for truth, they find themselves in trouble. They find themselves in trouble. So let's hear Kasukuwere speaking about that Mr. Mnangagwa should take this opportunity to introspect, reflecting on all that is wrong in the country and fix Zimbabwe. It is possible for him to do so, and you also know that it is really possible. But the question is, do they have the capacity? It is possible, but do they have the capacity? Because the problem here is not, is it possible? Is it, can they be able to do so? The capacity is a problem. You know, I'm a firm believer that sometimes, no matter how good something can be and how easy something can be, it's difficult for someone to do it because they may not have the grace or the capacity to carry that assignment. That I'm sure that's where we are now. Seeing people who cannot be able to do what is right. Now take a listen to Xavier Kasukuwere commenting on the same thing, issue of sanctions and also the role of SADC. Let's go ahead, please, and listen.
I think it's a move in the right direction. We've always wanted, and this has been the position of SADC and other countries, that sanctions against the people of Zimbabwe and the government institutions be dropped. And I think the American government has finally done the correct thing.
Mr. Kasukuwere, Zimbabwe on a broader whole has been suffering with regards to these sanctions. These ones are different ones, aren't they? Because they are directed at the leadership, am I right?
From my reading, I think these take a personal approach on the leadership as opposed to these ZARA ones, which were part of the Biden executive authority, which he decided on yesterday. They basically ended up affecting the entire economy because of the implications on some of the state-owned institutions like ZDI, Zimbabwe Minerals Corporation, as well as the Mnangagwa Building Corporation. And I think their removal is a step in the right direction.
Kasukuwere, we had you here on Talking Point, obviously post the elections in Zimbabwe, and of course, you know, you bemoaned that the elections were not free and fair. You said that there is an iron fist that's being ruled within Zimbabwe. Does this change now the approach of the leadership, or are we going to see more of the same with these sanctions being imposed?
I think this is a time for Mnangagwa to do some self-introspection and reflection on what type of country Zimbabwe should be in terms of his legacy. What does he want to leave behind? In as much as I have issues with him at a personal level, at a political level, sanctions are sanctions. We must separate that and say we don't need people to tell us how to resolve our issues. However, the way Mnangagwa has been handling the issues of Zimbabwe, some of us who are outside the country are actually reading from his own set of sanctions as well as the country. So he needs to mature and provide leadership that will unite every citizen behind the pain and suffering our people are going through. There's much more that can be done to build our country than to remain dogged in fights, dogged in disunity. When poverty is on the doorstep, hunger is on the doorstep, we have a lot on our plate, and our plate is full. This is the time for leadership and wisdom to prevail. Call upon every Zimbabwean to come and participate in the building of our country and ensure that every citizen is right in the country. Because he's not doing that, it is now giving those other people, the United States of America in this case, an excuse. And it becomes very hard for anybody to speak out against it, especially when you're a victim of these misrule.
Yeah.
Many rights groups, especially in Zimbabwe, many journalists in Zimbabwe have been, of course, complaining. They've been bemoaning that they have been suppressed. Freedom of media has been suppressed within Zimbabwe. Can this change? Can this sanctions now turn the screw in terms of giving there more media freedom within Zimbabwe, more activism within Zimbabwe? Can this be the sort of catalyst that the country needs, given that it's been years and years under the leadership of Mnangagwa, but this has really seen a heighten of the suppression?
I not want to jump in now in comment. I want to hear from the government, especially from Mnangagwa, his take on the accusations that have been leveled against him.
Yeah.
Are these genuine or they're not true? And later on, what is he going to do therefore differently so that we can all be able to rally behind one common objective as a people? And the honors here, in personal way, is on Mnangagwa to this point.
Mr. Kasukuwere, SADC, we haven't heard anything from them as yet. We haven't heard anything from the president here in South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa. But one would assume that SADC would be looking at this and maybe sitting in discussion and asking the question, what do we do now? Do we go ahead and back these sanctions, or do we take a different approach? As somebody who served in the previous cabinet of Zimbabwe under the late Robert Mugabe, what approach are you looking for from a SADC perspective?
I think we need to pay tribute to the SADC leaders who have raised the issue of sanctions on a number of occasions and in a number of forums, including the setting aside of a special day, as recommended by the late President of Tanzania, who for a proposal to have a day where, I think it's 23rd of October, if I'm not mistaken, where the region basically comes together to discuss about the sanctions, the impact they've had on the people of Zimbabwe. So I think that kind of push, which has also seen the AU take a position, has been very helpful in getting the United States of America to make this move. This decision really, like I said, comes at a good time when we're also expecting that our country will have a good result. It will be in the interest of Zimbabwe to have that wherewithal to look after its people by sanctions going away. So the regional body is obviously will react to this position. They are yet to respond, and I don't yet any other leaders respond, because the latest position by the Americans, you've got the State Department on one end and the Treasury on one end, all making decisions which on one end, the Treasury has removed those were sanctioned, but you also have the State Department revoking a piece of legislation from the Russia, the Magnitsky law, which we are all yet to really understand the import of that. But from a preliminary point of view, basically just from looking at it as it is, the key institutions like the Mineral Marketing Corporation of Zimbabwe, the Zimbabwe Mining Development Corporation of Zimbabwe, a lot of the banks are now off the book, meaning that there is a chance for industry and business to start moving forward, to start growing. But we have to look at the comprehensive picture. What does it mean in the final analysis? But so far, I think the move is a welcome move because it lessens the pressure on businesses to interact with Zimbabwe. The Zimbabwe defense industries, which is a key national defense body, cannot be able to procure spares and so forth that they require for the defense force of our country. So those, I think, are some of the what I would call the silver lining on the cloud. We want to welcome that move, but also want to, at some point, introspect and say, okay, broadly, what does it mean? Hence, I've said it is essential for Mnangagwa to put on his leadership plan and start seeing that each and every citizen of Zimbabwe must be protected. But they can't be special citizens. The question of corruption, stealing, we wrote, I think, about $3 billion just early this year. This year to date, they've lost $3 billion. And who's stealing? Those who are responsible for corruption must account for what they are doing what they are doing by abusing our national resources.
Mr. Kasukuwere, I've got just 1.5 minutes. I need to get in this question. You spoke about introspection. You spoke about maybe this could be the turning of the tide, hopefully from a Zimbabwean perspective. You as a former cabinet minister, of course, are not in Zimbabwe anymore because you're not being favored in this current cabinet of Zimbabwe. If President Mnangagwa were to put an olive tree and say, we want to redevelop Zimbabwe, we want to rebuild Zimbabwe, we need expertise, we need former cabinet ministers like yourself, Mr. Kasukuwere, to return and rebuild Zimbabwe, to lift these sanctions. Is that something that you may be interested in?
We are interested in moving the national agenda forward. And if it is a genuine call by somebody who has understood the implications of the negative energy and generated over the years, it will be a very, very good step in the right direction. And all right things in Zimbabwe will rally around a national consensus that defines, reveals, and strengthens our country.
Mr. Kasukuwere, thank you so much for joining us on Ila Live. Much appreciated.
All right.
That's Xavier Kasukuwere. He was a former minister in Zimbabwe for local government and public works. Do stay tuned first. We're going to be having Isha.
All right, guys, so you've heard Sylvia Kasukuwere, okay, commenting on the same issue of sanctions. So this is what I'm going to say. Guys, you know, change is very difficult. If you have been behaving a certain way for years, you talk of decades here, it's difficult for you to just wake up in the morning and say, I want to be a different person. Those who have been through changes in life can tell you how difficult that is. It's even worse if you are owing allegiance to a certain group, the elites. They have so much to lose. They have so much to lose in terms of resources. They have so much to lose in terms of their own lifestyle, because some are going to go to prison. So they can only imagine, how is that going to work? Because they say, hey, if I'm going to go to prison, I'm going to go back to prison with you. I mean, I'm looking at the Zimbabwe situation. It's going to be such an interesting country. I mean, the days that we are approaching are going to be very, very interesting days, honestly. But at the end of the day, you cannot sow evil and expect to get away with it. I'm saying this to those who have been looting, involved in corruption, some of them even killing, hating your brothers and sisters, abducting innocent souls, and they think you can get away with it. It doesn't work like that in life, brothers. You do evil, you're going to have your day that you're going to pay, notwithstanding who is covering you up. It doesn't work. That's why I'm saying it's a season that's going to be very excruciating, especially for those that have been enjoying, the people of Zimbabwe's tears. Your time is finally here. Truth is out. You can't escape. You can't lie anymore. You can't expect to sow evil and reap good. Life is governed by principles. While the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest shall never cease. Whatever you sow in life is what you reap. It is what it is. It's your time, brothers. I've been laughing today and I was like, you know what, it's funny that most of these corrupt individuals stays in Harare. They have to be within the parameters of where the real decisions are made. It's very rare, I know, there are people who may be corrupt in Bulawayo, but I want you guys to tell me if you've had many corrupt individuals in Bulawayo. I know there was a story that was reported like a week or 2 weeks ago where a Bulawayo company was also robbed into corruption, but again, it's still linking to those that are in the capital city, very close to where decisions are being made. It is quite sad. But my point is, I don't know about the introspection. I don't know about the uniting of the people. Guys, we talk of decades of disunity, decades of thriving or capitalizing on divide and rule. And you can just wake up in the morning and say, now I wanted to unite people. It's going to take a lot. But at the end of the day, sometimes pressure of life gives. When it's time, it is time. You know what I mean? You have nothing that you can do to stop it. When God says yes, you can't say no. When he says it is now, you can't say tomorrow. It says today. I don't know why people would think that they can do wrong and get away with it. I think they saw what Mugabe did. He did all manner of nonsense and he went to the grave before he paid his due, but he was supposed to. I remember the son crying that when he was sick in Singapore, I'm like, hold on, brother. Who was forcing him to be a president? You wanted to be there, isn't it? We think that there should be years of retirement where everyone can go in and play with the grandkids, But you want to die there. Whose fault is that? It's not our fault that you want to die in positions. I'm surprised you look at the parliament, you see people sleeping, old people sleeping in parliament. You ask yourself, don't you have grandchildren? This time you should all be busy there at what do you call them, like those old age homes. That's where you should be. But no, you are stuck in parliament, entertaining nonsense, and you start blaming people. I'm glad with the shape that the country is taking, because at least everyone now is standing up and said, we have had enough. We want to be out of this nonsense. Come hell, come thunder. You know what I'm saying? People are saying, no, it will take our souls. We have to come out. And we have to. For the sake of peace and next generation, we have been through the most. Honestly, we've been through the most. I hope our brothers and sisters will really come to party. People are going to left with one choice, either to sit around the table and say, hey guys, let's come up with a political settlement. And I say shout out to Dr. Ibo Mandas, who was pushing on that issue, political settlement. So you have to wait for you to be humiliated and exposed and embarrassed in order for you to say, hey guys, now I think we'll settle for political settlement. I just hope that they're going to choose that route and say, guys, we wronged you, we apologize. We're human beings, no one is perfect. Please forgive us. What can we do? What can we give in? I remember there was a nation where people were asked, what can you bring back for the money that you hide? How much can you bring back? And the people were literally making offers. I'm sure this is where we are heading. Tell the truth. Zimbabweans will forgive you. But if you think we can say up to the end, it's going to be very costly. I'm a firm believer that if you're not willing to do things right, you're going to pay it heavily. As Zekutu Nemari, it doesn't matter. Zekutu no Ziva Ani, it does not matter. That lead is going to come off. It's soon going to come off, y'all. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Interesting days ahead. I guess this is the Canaan that Kasukuwere was preaching. Remember, on the 31st of December, it was like, we are getting into Canaan. You are right, sir. We are definitely getting into Canaan. At the backdrop of your sanctions, we are getting into Canaan. That's how it works. Is that season we are saying it's in or nothing, but it is in. We are not giving up and we're not retreat, no revolving. We are in, we are getting in. We're not folding, y'all. It's that season. But anyway, because it's been a man who had been championing this sanction thing, you know, Rutendo Matinyarare. Shout out, brother. I know you have been singing left, right, and center. I do remember this, and the scenes keep on appearing. Like, I can see the scenes. My mind has got a tendency of playing games, yeah. You know, my mind is racing. Immediately, you know, in the software of my mind, it's actually bringing that scene up, and I'm seeing it. You know, when Rutendo was standing up, that was prior to elections. Do you remember that? He was sitting with 3-4 women, I remember, holding these placards and saying, America must remove sanctions. He was busy talking about ZADC sanctions, and we heard that ZADC does not affect nothing about progress in Zimbabwe. It's not even a sanction, actually. That's what they said. Americans said so. It wasn't me. They said it's not a sanction. Now, let's hear Rutendo Matinyarare speak, because I said I'm going to be fair here. I've got Rutendo Matinyarare. I do have Chris Marol, and I'm going to tell you his history as well. We do have our Fare Marapira, the worst. Today, I was literally saying, Mkoma Fare, come here, explain. We have heard what America said. We are waiting for you to rebut. I guess they're going to have a presser soon. How am I missing Muchangwa? You know, I'm just missing Chris Muchangwa. You know, when you have presser, he talks about Chamisa all the way. I'm missing him. You know, bring that brother back, please. So let's hear. Let's hear Fare Marano. Let's hear Rutendo Matinyarare, please. Let's give the brother a chance, because he is also saying, you know, he's got his own take on that.
Human rights
Take a listen.
Your take?
Thank you so much. And I initially thought that you had mischaracterized what had happened, which is the removal of executive order sanctions, which constitute about 93% or 99% of the Zimbabwean sanctions being removed, and 100% of sanctions on the Zimbabwean people, the government of Zimbabwe, and its parastatals and companies being removed. We are absolutely ecstatic about that, because we believe that we played a very big role with the court case that we were having here in South Africa, where we actually had Joe Biden answering to our papers, and we were going to challenge his application for immunity to DERCO and ask him to answer to the illegal sanctions that he's got on Zimbabwe, that he forces South African companies to implement. The fact that those sanctions have been removed is a very great thing. And when we look at these new sets of sanctions, the Magnitsky Act, we believe that this was just a way for the Americans to save face. They have instituted sanctions on Zimbabwe for 23 years, sanctions that were actually impacting civilians, and now they've removed them, and we believe that they were coerced to remove them. But just as a superpower, they couldn't just remove the sanctions. They had to maintain the facade of dealing with human rights violations, or at least what they allege are human rights violations. But what we are all asking is, we've got a lady called Sandra Mpunga, one of the billionairesses of Zimbabwe, a black woman, built a business with her husband to become the biggest fuel supplier in Zimbabwe. They've also got a number of other businesses and shareholdings in banks. How is it that they could be abusing human rights for them to be on those sanctions lists? We've got people like Obey Chimuka, another business person who owns one of the biggest cement manufacturers in the country. The question is, how does he abuse human rights by being a successful business person? And so Kasukuwere, and I'm not suggesting that the government officials that are on the list, they have violated human rights. But the question is, since when are allegations used to punish people and to take away their rights to trade and move on the basis of allegations without giving them an opportunity to answer for themselves in a court of law before punishing them? So in fact, the judicial punishment through these sanctions is still unfair, but we do celebrate the fact that the United States has removed 99% of the sanctions that were impacting Zimbabwean lives, and maybe now Zimbabwe can begin to grow.
And in fact, just on your comment about, the U.S.'s way of saving face, the U.S. Deputy Treasury General saying that, or Treasury Secretary Wally Adeyemo actually saying that, the changes they are making are intended to show what has always been clear as truth, and that is to say that the sanctions were never meant or never intended to target the people of Zimbabwe and individuals, as you've rightfully mentioned, but only to target a select few. I mean, do you find that to be the truth?
It's disingenuous because they've punished the Zimbabwean people for 23 years. And it is only after we started taking legal action, it is after we went to the United Nations and began to threaten to go to the International Court of Justice for crimes against humanity that were being perpetuated by illegal sanctions that were collectively punishing the Zimbabwean people, persecuting the Zimbabwean people, and have actually killed in excess of 1 million people in the last 23 years. We've got women who are dying giving birth. We've got children that are dying without getting to the age of 5 years of age because of these illegal sanctions that were imposed on a government to stop it from giving healthcare, education, and basic services to its people. So it has never been about human rights. Plus, their own Universal Declaration of Human Rights and human rights laws, they say that people must be tried before they're punished. People must be given an opportunity to appear in front of a court of their peers, and they should have an opportunity to answer and defend themselves to allegations. Now, right now, these people that have remained under sanctions, the 10 people on the Magnitsky Act, are being punished for human rights violations and corruption that has never been proved in any court of law, has never been tested in any court of law, and that extrajudicial punishment is a contravention of human rights and the very same laws created by the United States through the UN and through its human rights organizations. So it is disingenuous, and the fact that an African is the one being used to convey this kind of a lie and also to advance American hegemony is quite unfortunate.
Now, your organization was created, with the very objective of combating what you call Western imperialism, by promoting African unity, etc. Are you then hopeful, that this latest development that we'll see other countries, soon following suit, and of course these sanctions and restrictions being lifted by the U.S.?
Look, my biggest fear is that the removal of these sanctions actually portends to a bigger problem and a shift in the geopolitical power of Southern Africa. We suspect that yes, our pressure that we have given the American government was very instrumental in removing these sanctions, but we also feel that they want to target South Africa with sanctions if by any way the ANC was to actually win in the next coming elections. And if the ANC wins in the next coming elections, we believe that there will be punishment upon the ANC for standing with Palestine and taking the Israel to the International Court of Justice. We believe that the position of South Africa on Zimbabwe and the position of South Africa on Russia and Cuba will also be used to punish it with economic sanctions. So we feel that the Americans know that once they punish South Africa, then they lose their support of very powerful countries within SADC. And we believe that they are realigning to make Zimbabwe a leader in SADC or a hub in SADC, so that when they do impose sanctions on South Africa, they still have a friend in the region. And what we are warning our government to say is that when this happens and capital wants to come to Zimbabwe, investors from South Africa, white capital wants to come to Zimbabwe, we expect our government to be circumspect of understanding imperialism and how it is being utilized through private capital, and make sure that they do not realign with a Western trajectory that could put us at loggerheads with countries like South Africa and actually become beneficiaries of the isolation of South Africa through economic sanctions. I believe that in this region, it will stand together, South Africa, Zimbabwe, irrespective of the benefits that Zimbabwe might be offered by coming investment, we must continue to stand together to fight imperialism, because this imperialism is the problem in the region. And we need to also turn countries like Zambia that seem to have given in to this Western imperialism and have become a conduit for allowing AFRICOM and the placement of American special forces and soldiers on SADC soil. We don't need that. We need peace in this region.
All right, Pretendo, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Of course, we could talk and go on forever in as far as this conversation is concerned, but unfortunately, we have run out of time.
I've told you the truth. Tendo Matinyera is sick in his head. He's literally sick in his head. He's trying so hard. Of course, he is twerking for the highest bidder. I've told you. I mean, these elites are really, they're powerful people. He's mentioning some names here, and he said these are billionaires in Zimbabwe, and they are running very, very truthful, successful, honest businesses. Oh, really? Oh, really? So America is crazy? The fact that they are being sanctioned, there must be reasons why. I know Opam Chingudi was because the time that, was it Zidera? She was actually the Minister of Defense. The police, because of this issue of violation of human rights, the police commissioner should protect the people of Zimbabwe, because he doesn't protect, maybe he doesn't, you may, but I'm saying if police can be involved in anything that may be criminal, you've heard many people say, I was assaulted by the police, or I was abducted and then I was taken, I was assaulted in the police cells, whatever the case may be. The police commissioner should stand and protect the citizens, but then if he fails, he finds himself being sanctioned. You also had Kudata Gwire, the business, a dubious business. I mean, if it's Kudata Gwire, because he says he's a Christian, and because he said he's a Christian, and I'm also a Christian, because we belong from the same family, I find it very weird, because every time there's corruption, be it the Centric Report, his name pops out, the gold mafia. I think there was, his name always pops out every time when there is corruption. So for that reason, people ask questions. You can't say, no, he's doing a very, honest business, but how come every time there is a report that is, addressing corruption in Zimbabwe, his name is there? I can only imagine, if your name is being found everywhere, where there's smoke, there's always be fire. I may not have all the facts, but because we are looking at the reports that we see in black and white, that's what we're discussing. But Rutendo is crazy. He is crazy. He is really crazy. The lies that he tells, now you can hear now he's not talking about if ANC wins elections, then they will be sanctioned by America. I mean, really? How do you mix elections and abuse of human rights and corruption? The two are the same. If a person is corrupt, he's corrupt. If they are doing their dubious businesses that will leave the money being starved in America, they will be sanctioned because they will see the books. It's different from Zimbabwe, where the banking system is compromised and people can do their corruption, nobody will know. And I've been saying, is this not the reason why people are kind of stepping on the banking system? So because they know that if I can give someone $1 million or $500, no one will see. There's no proof, there's no evidence. But if you can transfer, definitely people can trace this paper trail. Is that not the reason? Because I don't find a way. Why can't we just have a real intense where people don't keep money at home? There is money in the country, money in people's houses. Where can it be? In banks. One of my friends was like, I literally, be shocked that I would pay nearly $200 just for bank charges. And people are saying, how come? Again, that's what corruption is about. Is looting from the poor. Taking everything from the poor where you're stuffing it in America all over the world. It's a curse. They are cursed. It is what it is, unfortunately. The church may not be telling them the truth. We can. You are cursed. You are cursed. It is really sad. Honestly, sad. Now, Chris Marol, because now what I love about Chris Marol's interviews that he was being asked, there was also Newsroom Africa, he was being asked about SADC. What is the role of SADC? Why is it SADC can't act, as far as these issues in Zimbabwe are concerned? Guys, the situation in Zimbabwe is visible. There is evidence. You can see by people leaving the country. You also people have watched the gold mafia to cry out loud. The Gold Mafia, I remember my client phoned me, he's a Zambian guy, said, I cried when I watched Gold Mafia. I cried. Thinking about how these people of Zimbabweans are suffering and, and see these, you remember, number one, when the president was being robbed into the Gold Mafia and his family as well, with the Uber Angel. He said it was painful for me to watch, knowing what Zimbabweans are going through. So we're going to listen to Chris Marol. Again, don't forget Chris Marol. He was one of the guys who went in with a group of guys to observe elections, and they were kicked out while they were in the hotel in Bulawayo by the police. They said they were called and asked what were they doing because they were in communication with Ibo Mandaza. Remember, we're working under the trust. It's called Trust, if I'm not mistaken. Please forgive me if I'm calling that name wrongly or pronouncing it wrong. So he's the guy that also still been commenting on the issue of sanctions. So we will hear him out. He's mentioning that Zimbabwe is a sovereign state. So sometimes it's hard for these leaders or presidents of different Southern African countries to actually push. And sometimes it's not an issue of push. It's an issue of talking to your brothers. Because if you can do business together, what stops you from talking to your brother? You know what I mean? You also remember what, I think this was Hopo Shingono, who actually said, Masisi, Masisi, the Botswana Masisi, is a close ally to the president of Zimbabwe. He used to come to Zimbabwe, even meeting the president when he was also bidding for a presidential post. And the other man, the tall guy that didn't have, he had a problem with Mugabe. At that time he was the president. He used to come to Zimbabwe when President Mnangagwa was the vice president of Zimbabwe, and they would spend time together. So they're really very close friends. My point is, if I'm close to someone, I should be able to say, hey, you know what? From a friendship point of view, I know we may be diplomatically, I understand, I know where to draw the line. But as a friend, can you see there's something wrong here? Can you fix this? Can you see your children? You know what I mean? Because a president is like a father, and the people in the country are children. Can you see there's something wrong here? Can you be able to help this person? As a brother and sister, my neighbor's kids can't be in trouble, and I'm going to say, no, but I can't because of diplomacy. No, I can speak to them like a people. But anyway, he's saying that because of diplomatic and Zimbabwe is a sovereign state, it's hard for them to just kind of push, but but I think SADC had a hand with this sanction thing that just came on now. When I saw immediately Hichilema commented on, or you tweeted on, and saying, thank you so much, President Biden, for actually removing these sanctions. But he didn't talk much about the one that was imposed on individuals. I think considering his experience with ZANU PF. So let's take a listen to Chris Marol talking about the same issue of sanctions. Quite an interesting season that we are in, and some of the goons have nowhere to hide. Take a listen, please.
Beyond your borders, the United States has terminated a Zimbabwe sanctions program and reimposed curbs on 9 individuals and 3 entities. Fresh sanctions have been imposed on President Emerson Mnangagwa, the First Lady, Auxilia Mnangagwa, the Vice President, Constantino Chiwenga, and other senior officials. The United States Treasury's Office, the Office of Foreign Assets Control, accuses them of being involved in corruption and serious human rights abuses. Let's bring in Chris Marol. He is Africa 360 Advisory's CEO for some analysis on these latest developments. Chris, it's great to see you. Thanks very much indeed for coming on. The Secretary of State calls it part of a stronger, more targeted sanctions policy. What do you make of these new sanctions?
Good afternoon, Michelle. Thank you for having me on your program. Certainly, it is a very interesting development coming from the United States, which seems to be planning to introduce more targeted sanctions, as you indicated, against 9 individuals and 3 entities. This will make it difficult for these individuals to travel to the United States and certainly to other jurisdictions, but more importantly, to transact. And we understand from the United States that these sanctions were imposed really as a means to enhance accountability and transparency in terms of governance in that country, which has been significantly in decline, particularly after the controversial contested elections that were held last year. Michelle, I think the interesting aspect about this that we need to take out of it is that the global McGinsky sanctions program, under which these new targeted sanctions are brought into place, this will be the first time that a head of state in the form of Emerson Mnangagwa is sanctioned under this new sanctions regime, which the United States has been using to basically coordinate its sanctions program.
You know, the question always becomes, Chris, given what's emerged and what has been known for quite some time insofar as the quashing of opposition politics in a country like Zimbabwe, multiple cases of abductions, physical abuse, unlawful killings have left citizens living in fear. This is also a statement from the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. It raises the question again about what neighboring countries, and South Africa perhaps is chief among them, just given how many Zimbabweans have fled to this country. Have we done enough insofar as the diplomatic means that we have available to us?
Certainly not, Michelle, and I think one of the key things that our government is at pains to point out, that is the South African government is at pains to point out, is that Zimbabwe is a sovereign state. And it is very difficult for them, in a sense, to impose punitive measures in the way that many of us would anticipate the South African government to engage in. Having said so, I think one of the key things that the South African government has been successful in doing is keeping the door open, especially with the governing ZANU PF. The ANC and ZANU PF do have historical links, and we have seen messages and engagement going through that channel in particular. But certainly one would hope that we would see, particularly at this time, heightened diplomatic action, like the action that we have seen the South African government engage in when it comes to the question in Israel, and how they have taken it upon themselves to really call upon the Israeli government to change and move away from their potentially genocidal activities that they've been engaged in.
Yeah, it's very interesting indeed. And, you know, what feeds into whether we decide to make statements like that and when we don't? I mean, there are various other incidents on the continent as well, insofar as gay rights is concerned, for example, where we've also chosen to stay mum.
Yes. I think one of the key considerations, especially from a South African foreign policy perspective, is that the South African government has been at pains also to point out that they like to operate through the sub-regional body, that is the Southern African Development Community, and also the Pan-African body, the African Union, when it comes to engaging with their counterparts on the African continent. This in many ways has limited the ability of South Africa to really engage in a more robust approach towards tackling some of these challenging questions that face the continent. For example, in Zimbabwe, the Democratic Republic of Congo, where South Africa has also deployed a contingent under the auspices of the Southern African Development Community, and prior to that, the United Nations. So in essence, we are seeing South Africa taking steps. However, in many ways, their multilateral approach to things has meant that the diplomatic engagement has often been complex and underpinned by respect for the sovereignty, territorial integrity, but more importantly, the fact of solidarity amongst maybe African governments has been one of the key things that has made maybe South Africa's foreign policy in many parts of the continent lack in the sort of teeth that we would have expected.
Well, speaking of teeth, there is also the toothless or toothful nature of AU and SADC, which perhaps we'll have another discussion on at another time. But Chris, you know, I remember the inauguration of Emerson Mnangagwa in 2017, and one does also feel, insofar as the US and its relations with Zimbabwe is concerned, that there were those hopes, brief hopes, of a thawing of those relations, and perhaps some hope for the people of Zimbabwe as well. At that stadium in 2017, I was in the anchor chair at the time. I forget the name of the stadium now, but it was very short-lived, wasn't it?
Were
yes,
betrayed.
It was. I believe it was the National Sports Stadium in Harare.
Yes.
And the interesting thing around that inauguration is that that period did usher in a time when many of us believed that there would be a set of reforms introduced. It really takes us back to the matter at hand here, Michelle, which is around this sanctions regime. These sanctions really should be seen as a tool to implement the overarching U.S. policy towards Zimbabwe, which is described as ZADERA, which is the Zimbabwe Democracy, Reconstruction and Economic Act, which is the overarching policy introduced by Congress as an act, which basically determines the United States policy towards Zimbabwe, and the fact that they want to reintroduce greater democracy, that is accountability, transparency. They would like to see reforms that see a reconstruction of Zimbabwe's economy, which has been faltering for quite some years now. Challenge with this is that the ZADERA Act in and of itself and the sanctions that were introduced about 2 decades ago led to a strategic articulation or narrative by Zimbabwe, which said that the economic decline in Zimbabwe, the political malaise that we've seen in that country, emanates mainly due to Western interference, the United States, the EU, and other actors from the West. And now, the fact that these sanctions have been lifted really has been a smart strategic move by the United States to basically say that we're now targeting these sanctions. They are much tighter, much stronger, focused on specified individuals designated under this new sanctions regime. Now, this basically means, Michelle, that maybe the narrative from Harare will change ever so slightly, where they'll start to say that, well, if you have sanctions against our top leadership in Zimbabwe, you might as well have kept the old sanctions in place. So it's going to be interesting to see what the reaction and the immediate response to this from Harare will be. And we can anticipate that the normal vitriol around Western interference will be underpinning element of this approach.
And we might also ask the question, do these sanctions now put an economy that is already under severe pressure under the hammer even more? And I suppose the U.S. response to that would be that the economy of any country is the responsibility of that country.
That's right. And ultimately, I would really say that the decline that we have seen in Zimbabwe's economy has really been man-made. It has been as a result of bad governance that has eroded investor confidence in that country. It has also emanated, or rather generated, a situation in that country where people have chosen to vote with their feet because they do not believe in the efficacy of their electoral system. Many of them find themselves in South Africa, where we see millions of Zimbabweans coming here as economic refugees. So ultimately, the people who have undermined the economy in Zimbabwe has been the government of that country, who have introduced policies that have not resulted in the kind of investor confidence and economic stability that will see the sort of investment coming into Zimbabwe.
So what do we hope will come out of these sanctions, Chris? Because the U.S. will say as well, and I think this was a statement that was made by the Deputy Treasury Secretary in the U.S. The changes, this is a quote, the changes we are making today are intended to make clear what has always been true. Our sanctions are not intended to target the people of Zimbabwe. That might be true. That might be the intention. The reality, I imagine, is different, Chris.
Yeah, the reality is different in the sense that what we witness on the ground in Zimbabwe is a faltering opposition, an opposition that has ultimately all but collapsed in that country. And this is mainly due to the operating environment and some strategic mistakes that have been made by opposition leaders in that country. Secondary to that has been the lack of effective governance that has been really the trade in stock of the governing party in that country, which has been ZANU PF. There has only been one party in charge in that country. And I think our analysis has also been slightly off in the sense that we have not condemned the fact that 2017, there was a military coup that saw President Robert Mugabe being kicked out unconstitutionally from office. A lot of people thought any change would be as good as a holiday. But as we have discovered, the corruption, the human rights abuses have continued even under this new regime of Emerson Mnangagwa. There has not been an improvement in the economic situation. Some argue, in actual fact, that the economy has worsened. So our view is that what needs to happen in Zimbabwe is a comprehensive set of reforms that are not focused on any one political party. A transition must be put into place where maybe some kind of government of national unity that can act in the interest of Zimbabweans can be put into place. This, in our view, will ultimately sort out the structural issues which have yet to be addressed in Zimbabwe.
I don't think the government of national unity is a good idea. What I think is transitional government to work better. You know, I want to ask you a question. Do you remember the helicopters, those yellow helicopters that came last time to airlift to people? Which shocks me because, you know, there was a young little sweetheart, the baby that actually died 2 days ago. And Banazivwe and some of these brothers of mine, Nana Ali, they were even trying to airlift the child so that she can get treatment. By the way, I also heard that the child has been taken before the, mama, auxiliary, so that they would get some help, and there was no help. Do you remember those the yellow ones? The yellow and red that were bought allegedly for $320 million US. You remember that? Anyone with a relative that was airlifted to the hospital. You remember that? Any person, that's why I'm actually reading this tweet here where Ali is saying that a whole airline was launched in Zimbabwe and the planes just disappeared. There was an airline that was launched. Do you remember that? Boom. And helicopters were also commissioned to ferry persons and they disappeared. It happens only in Zimbabwe. What happened? I heard that they didn't have pilots to fly them, so they were waiting for people from Russia to actually come to Zimbabwe and then help to train these these pilots so that they can fly. Now my question was that a priority? We don't even have pilots who can fly those planes. We don't even know where they are. They may be there, but are they useful right now? Was it an emergency? But we look at hospitals that don't have medication. People have been asking, you look at the Mpuzi interchange, was that any emergency? Why are these projects being prioritized? Because that's where the looters have their hands on. You know what I mean? These are simply allegations, speculations. People are saying because the looters know that's where they benefit. So they would rather push those deals to go through so they can get the money. At the expense of who? The citizens, of course. The citizens. Now, because I said I'm going to be the last person I'm going to give the platform is Farai Marapira, my brother. Farai has taken over this as a spokesperson for ZANU PF. Remember, Chris was removed. Allegations are he had disrespected the presidency. He was removed because of any subordination. He was being disrespectful and he was like kicked out. Of which it makes sense because Chris, really? Chris is wild. But there's one thing that is really interesting here because my brother Jairus kept on saying, I'm sure Chris has got, it's got his footprints around all these sanction things because he was very upset. And he's an ally for the United States of America. We've seen him gallivanting there with private jets and all, taking pictures. And sometimes you see them in the car and the wife dancing. And, you've seen him the many years and living with his wife. And you know what I mean? And people are saying, this one that is putting pressure. I said, whether he puts the pressure or not, the bottom line is Zimbabweans want a change of government. They are sick and tired. People want a change of air. Just breathing a different air. Just get to have different leaders. You can't be having the same people for decades. It gets tiring. Give other people a chance. And I was shocked because people were busy attacking James Manyika. Apparently, James Manyika was in Zimbabwe recently. He's the vice president for Google. You know him, you remember the interview that he had, the conversation he had with Trevor Masiwa. Incredible talk is there on YouTube. And he was in Zimbabwe, and this is what he had to say. He said, it's not that I will, because people ask him questions. When you're in Zimbabwe, why can't you do business with Zimbabwe? You seem to be having what it takes, to be able to be maybe the minister of ICT. Remember, we've got that lady, Matevera, you know what I mean? And James said, it's not that I will go around the world saying Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe. Only for Zimbabwe to embarrass me, it doesn't work. Listen to men who knows their place. You know, when you know who you are, you can't be messed up. He said, no, I can't go around and say Zimbabwe, 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 and try to embarrass myself. He said, if you guys expect me to do something in Zimbabwe, he said, I've done a lot of work. I've given bursaries. I'm still helping young people. But I'm also expecting the government of Zimbabwe to do something in return. What he's trying to say is make the place or the country conducive for people to come in and do businesses. You can't expect us to come in and invest money, but when there's a lot of loopholes and we know nothing works. You also remember Kudam Sasua saying that there were guys who literally came from the United Kingdom. They came together and said, hey guys, we need to revamp Mbari. They wanted to revamp the entire Mbari and make sure that it is top class. But they were blocked. They were like, hey, be careful. You know, I remember those words he said them when we were having a meeting on Twitter. You know, it's on X, sorry. It's sad. It's sad. So I agree with Manyika for saying so. Make the place conducive for businesses. But if you're not doing so, don't expect me to be dragged into that mud. I'm not going to come there. He's right. You know, he's got standards. I mean, imagine working for Google, top class, sitting in meetings and becoming dragged with Kuchina. No, you want to say, sorry, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Now I know my place. I know my standards. I know my worth here. You know, he's right. And respect for Mr. Manyika. Now, this story, I'm going to have to dig it tomorrow. I heard that the VP is being sued. VP is being sued. So a United Kingdom and Wales-based company, Electricity Management Services Limited, EMS, has sued Vice President Constantino Chiwenga after losing a tender to supply smart meters. The VP is being sued. I've been asking questions. I know there's always going to be, some requirement, not requirements, such some do's and don'ts within the president's VP in terms of business-wise. I don't know the constitution in Zimbabwe, what it says about, these high rank officials doing businesses around it. But you can see he's being sued. So I'm trying to understand why. But because I left this rebutting for Farai Marapira, the spokesperson for ZANU PF, just hear this man out. Yo, we're in for a problem. I'm looking at Farai, he's a young man. And I'm like, Farai, do you know that in the next 10, 20 years, we're going to be questioning you? Yeah, we're going to say, Mr. Farai, do you see the mess that you were causing? People don't think. There'll be consequences. History will judge. It is what it is. So we're going to hear Farai Marapira. At least, just be gentle with him because he is ruthless. He's worse. He's even worse than Muchangwa. He's worse. The dude lies. He lies so much. And today I called him on Twitter. I was like, come over. What are you going to say after you heard what America said regarding the sanctions? What's your rebutting? But anyway, let's take a listen to Mr. Farai Marapira, speaking on behalf of ZANU PF regarding these sanctions. Go ahead.
Beyond your borders, the United States has terminated a Zimbabwe sanctions program and reimposed curbs on 9 individuals and 3 entities. Fresh sanctions have been imposed on President Emerson Mnangagwa, the First Lady, Auxilia Mnangagwa, the Vice President, Constantino Chiwenga, and other senior officials. The United States Treasury's Office, the Office of Foreign Assets Control, accuses them of being involved in corruption and serious human rights abuses. Let's bring in Chris Marol. He is Africa 360 Advisory's CEO for some...
My apologies. Bear with me, please. My apologies. I think I'm bringing the wrong interview. Apology. But I want you to listen to Farai. Very important. Please just bear with me, guys. It is so important. Let me look for Farai. In the interim, I'm going to let you just listen to our music while I bring Farai through My apologies. I know something happened here. Bear with me, please. You're gonna drop your blue hearts here if you support Nelson Chamisa, yo. You're gonna drop your blue hearts. I'm gonna have to push on my candidate, yo. I do support Nelson Chamisa and I'm not budging. All right, so shout out to Mona Mukundu. Okay, so thank you, Mona Mukundu, for literally give this song a beat, because yeah, it was sad to watch these girls and the young kids singing, and nobody was willing to. And Mona Mukundu went in there and just like, yeah, let's give flavor to the song, and I'm so thankful that he did so. Honestly, I'm grateful that he did so. So yeah, we're gonna be listening to Brother Farai Marapira. Whew, yeah. I thought what's his name was bad, but Farah is worse. He's worse. Yeah, I just know that Farah is worse. He's just one of those people that does not care about how Zimbabweans feel. He lies and he lies and he lies. Unbelievable. So yeah, let's give Mr. Farai Marapira a chance to literally speak on behalf of ZANU PF, so that we can all hear what they're saying regarding these sanctions. But again, like I mentioned before, he is saying that as long as President Mnangagwa is sanctioned, he doesn't think that the country is free. But you had that these sanctions don't really have nothing to do with individuals. Zimbabwe is a country and can stand on its own. Individuals can also pay, because bear in mind, President Mnangagwa is a businessman. Remember? Don't forget what Jonathan Moyo said last time when he said that he's actually the richest man in town. I hope you know that President Mnangagwa is the richest man in Zimbabwe. Apparently, that was Jonathan Moyo who said that President Mnangagwa is the richest man in town. Those were his words, not my words. His words. So please, here we are bringing Mr. Farai Marapira so that you can hear him, protecting ZANU PF. Yeah. I'm so sorry because something is happening here back and forth, but we're going to hear him soon. I'm trying. Oh my God, just bear with me, please. Wow, that's interesting. Wow. Bear with me, please. Just be a little bit patient while I'm getting the something that is going on here. But please bear with me. Let me just play the song again while I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. There's something I need to do. Please, bear with me. Yeah, let's put it there. All right, here we are. Thank you, Ambassador of Peace. Guys, thank you. I'm so blessed, y'all. Thank you. I appreciate you, Ambassador of Peace. There's actually a thank you button. I don't like to ask, I don't like asking for things, but if you feel like being a blessing to your sister, go ahead and do it. But I'm not a person who like asking for things. I believe in work. All right, guys, come on. Here we are. Mr. Farah is here, please.
Remain with any sanctions against anyone in Zimbabwe, especially our leader.
Okay.
The human rights conversation further now, and we're joined by ZANU PF spokesperson, that's the governing party in Zimbabwe. Farai Marapira is the spokesperson there. Mr. Marapira, good evening to you, and thank you for your time. Nick Mangwana, that's the spokesperson for the Zimbabwe government, quoted as saying that this is a great vindication of President Mnangagwa's foreign policy direction. And specifically, he was referring to the lifting of the old sanctions program. Is that how the governing party sees it?
Well, it is a vindication in the sense that the open door policy of President Mnangagwa has forced Americans to try and revisit their sanctions and try to sanitize their sanctions. But sanctions are vindictive and sanctions are aggressive. So as long as we remain with any sanctions against anyone in Zimbabwe, especially our leader and senior members of our government, then we still haven't made much progress. But this attempt by the Americans to try and sanitize their sanctions regime is a sign of the successes in our foreign policy, where we've said we're a friend to all and an enemy to none.
But the statement from America is very clear that issues of corruption, human rights abuses, including stifling opposition parties in Zimbabwe, remains a problem. And perhaps this is part of the reason why the president, including a number of senior government officials, remain under sanctions. Has anything improved in that regard?
To be honest, these are just allegations without substance, and the Americans know that this is just rhetoric. America will never put sanctions on the basis that it is stating there, because it has so many countries it is trading well with who are doing terrible things in this world. But the mere fact of things is that this is just a matter of American foreign policy. We can never run away from the fact that these sanctions are brought about because of our land reform, because of the need by Zimbabwe to be self-reliant and self-guiding and autonomous. The neo-colonial agenda of the West cannot accept an African country which is self-determining. So all this hullabaloo about human rights abuses, corruption, and all these things, we and Americans know, and every analytical Zimbabwean or person in the world knows that this is not the case. It is a simple case of challenging the Americans to show a record of human rights abuses within the last 12 months. A case of the United States government showing us the corruption that they allege which has occurred within the last 12 months, which is the basis for these sanctions. I'm sure they will come up dry and they will not come up with anything tangible to speak of, because we have a vibrant democracy in process and we've got a vibrant democracy at play.
When you say that these are just allegations, the jailing of opposition party leaders, that is something that the world has seen. The jailing of journalists, that is something that the world has seen. I'm merely scratching the surface here, sir. So when you say these are mere allegations, I put it to you, you are the one who is sanitizing the situation in Zimbabwe,
Right.
are you not?
Good question.
Not at all, because here in Zimbabwe we do not arrest politicians, we do not arrest journalists, we arrest people who have committed crimes, regardless of their political office or station. You cannot claim that a person who incited violence was jailed unfairly when last weekend, within the last week at the burial of an opposition member, he was embroiled in a case of violence at the gravesite. So this is the nature of things. We cannot have people committing crimes on the basis that they shall run to the media and state so many different things. We do not arrest a person based on their profession. We arrest people who have committed crimes, whether they be politicians, journalists, bankers, taxi drivers. Anyone who commits a crime is liable equally before the courts of law. And we shall not hesitate to have the police do their job simply because it might not be fashionable with some media houses and some certain embassies which have an agenda to pursue.
You know, I had to chip in there, and especially for this past funeral of Mo Blessing Ali. You saw what happened at the funeral, and this was orchestrated, and I still have a question. Are the people who were dramatic, they arrested? I remember what a script. It's diabolical, evil, wickedness, satanic. People are burying their loved one who was literally murdered. And after 2 years of suffering, excruciating pain, people have the nerve to send in thugs to go in there and make noise. And then you come here and say that it was because of Chamisa. This is sad to hear Farage saying that. Honestly, I know he's pushing the agenda and all these, you call them propaganda, I call them lies. Because propaganda, that word on its own conceals nonsense. It's too glamorous. Wrong is wrong, lies are lies. And he has the nerve now to come here and start to say, when people are making noise, how come those guys are not arrested? Why are they not arrested up to now? I've never seen from nowhere people just started making noise and started woo, woo, woo. Because they knew that they were having an agenda. They were paid to do the nonsense. Why are they not arrested? And it is wrong. Farage needs to be respectful. It is really wrong. Wrong. Honestly, sometimes you need to be human to know what's right and what's wrong. You cannot carry on being disrespectful and people must just look and say because he's a spokesperson of a political party. It's wrong. Honestly, Farage needs to be rebuked and be told, Mkoma, you're too young. These old people will be gone while you are facing your own music in this world. And people have to treat you like nothing. And because you have been sowing evil. Honestly, this family is in pain. They don't deserve such. We all remember what happened immediately when she was found. Her body was found. You remember that they were even being harassed by thugs from ZANU PF. I remember that family was being harassed. It is wrong. To a point where the kids could not even sleep at their house. No, guys, how long are you going to leave this family in peace? For how long are you going to carry on abusing them? And you think people must just look at you because of your political party? Who the hell do you really think you are? This is wrong. It has to be condemned and they have to be stopped. It's wrong.
And journalists, the jailing of journalists, what justification could there be?
We do not arrest journalists. We arrest people that have committed crimes.
Oh.
If a journalist commits a crime against the laws of Zimbabwe, then they are arrested. Just like anybody else. There is no one who's given any special treatment before the law, and there's no one who's given any extrajudicial treatment. Our courts are very open and they're very free. I will simply challenge you to have these allegations substantiated by showing how at law these arrests are unlawful and how at law any of the process during which this person was being tried is unlawful. The laws of our country are very clear.
So let me ask you a specific...
it can clearly be proven.
So let me give you a specific individual's name. Hopewell Chinono was thrown in jail. One of the most difficult jails, we understand, in Zimbabwe. And he sat there for months on end. What crime did he commit, to your understanding?
To my understanding, Hopewell Chinono will have committed a crime. He was in remand. And serving time in remand is not the same as serving time in prison. But this dovetails back to the same situation. It is not my burden to prove that Hopo
was arrested fairly, it is his burden to prove that he was arrested unfairly. And if you're to go on his timeline or to go anywhere where he has argued his issues, he has no facts at law where he says why he was unfairly arrested. We need to understand that we cannot approach the law with morality or opinion, because the law is the law and the law states what it is. If a person has committed a crime at law, he will be arrested. And people cannot try and postulate that if they commit crimes and they're arrested, then they can seek a political solution to a criminal offense. We will not have that. We fought for independence so that we could have a sustainable rule of law, and that is what we abide by.
Let's conclude the conversation, and let me ask you about whether you think ZANU PF is the party of the future.
Right,
Zimbabwe.
good question.
Is that
good question.
Something that you really honestly are convinced that this is the party that is going to turn things around in Zimbabwe for the better?
I do not want to say that ZANU PF will turn things around when ZANU PF is actually turning things around. And for evidence of this, you do not need to look at what I say or look at any pro-government papers. You can look at the reports of the World Bank, the reports of the IMF, international institutions which are run by the same Western countries which spread the message that Zimbabwe is a failing state. We have one of the fastest growing economies in Africa, despite these sanctions, despite all these strictures that are being put against us. So my question is, imagine a Zimbabwe which would have no sanctions, where our vision under President Mnangagwa was allowed to run without any hindrance. Where would we be today? One doesn't need to even travel 10 kilometers out of the capital city to see the wonderful, marvelous infrastructural development that is taking place and the way the economy is growing in leaps and bounds. This is the reality of Zimbabwe, and any person who visits Zimbabwe will tell you this.
Sure.
So the old story that Zimbabwe is a dying state, Zimbabwe is a suffering state, that story cannot carry anymore today, because the reality is very tangible, the reality is very different. And ZANU PF has been proven to be the part of the future by the vote that the people gave it on the 23rd of August last year. We are the party with the faith of the people, we are the party with the belief of the people, and we're the party with the vision of the people. It is ZANU PF which will take Zimbabwe forward. It is ZANU PF which is taking Zimbabwe forward. And under the leadership of President Mnangagwa, there is no stone that will be left unturned as we develop and progress our nation forward.
And yet, it is said that almost 3 million Zimbabweans are food insecure. If really things are turning around in Zimbabwe, why would that be the situation?
We are facing an impending drought. And I will ask you a simple question. Can any of those people saying that show you any picture of people that are suffering or in the last stages of hunger? We are a very astute government. We've been farming and reaping more than our annual needs for the past 2 years. So we have our stocks. Whatever we need to replenish, we will buy. We have no challenges at all. We've got a very sound social security system which will be taking care of our people. That is what the ZANU PF government is about. It is a people-based party, and it is a people-based government. And we say to the aspirations of the people. Any normal Zimbabwean knows that, yes, we're facing this impending drought and this impending challenge with food. But our social service system is already in place, and we are ready to roll it out and start attending to areas that are under challenge. As a matter of fact, in some of the areas which are always drought-prone, whether we have a good rain season or not, we've already started rolling out food. So there's a difference between propaganda and there's a difference between propaganda and reality. What we have to tell you is the reality, and what others have to say is the propaganda. It's simple. It's a matter of proving. It's a matter of putting facts in front of what you say. That is the difference between us and our detractors. They have no evidence, just rhetoric, words with no substance, and they always end up hollow.
Farai Marapira, let's leave the conversation there. Although, yeah, I have lots to say, but time is against us.
So do I.
Thank you very much
Thank you,
for
my
your
brother.
time.
You heard him? Yeah. You know, I think that's the worst part about Zimbabwe is the lies more than anything else. The gaslighting is so heavy, it's intense. You know, it's one thing for people to accept, no, you know what, things were wrong, we are willing to fix it, we can do it better. Guys, there's nothing wrong to say I've made mistakes and we can fix it. It's not a crime. It doesn't make you less of a human. But know what's wrong is the lies. And no, Farah is worse. Are you guys telling me that you would want to be with Farah in the next 5 years, being this spokesperson, hearing him speaking the way that he does? Maybe I would just borrow the words of Maware, who said when someone was talking about the third term, and he said, don't even talk about the third term, just pray that your government will actually finish this term, this one here. Forget about the third term, talk about now. Hearing the way Farah speaks, I can only imagine. Me listen to this man talking all the time with the way that he lies like that. Now, guys, for me, maybe I'm different, you know. I'm from Mashingo, so I don't know other people from which town you are from or which rural you are from. But I grew up from the time I was young, seeing people being given food all the time. How many people can confirm that? Like, we've been a charity case literally all our life. I remember that, people being given food. For how long are we going to always be beggars? For how long? And they are not willing to take responsibility. But what do? They gaslight. It's very heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. And you're talking to South Africans who can see some of your brothers sleeping in bus. People are paying 10 rand to sleep in the bus. Some of our brothers are sleeping on the streets. They're street kids. Every Saturday, I'm going outside, I'm seeing girls literally lying next to my house here by the robot, looking for work to be maids. And these people have got degrees. I know security guards who have political science degree from the University of Zimbabwe. And all you can say is, no, it's all a lie. We've got everything, the fastest growing economy in Africa. For real? For real. In a nation where there's not even the bond note is in the bin. Sometimes it's okay to say, you know what, guys, we are trying. We ask for the grace that we can fix this stuff, and we would ask every Zimbabwean to bring their heads together so we can do it, we can fix it, than to lie. And this man Farah is a liar. I do not care that he's a spokesperson of a political party. Sometimes your conscience should actually say no. But do they even have conscience? That's the question. I don't think they do. They do. They don't have conscience. The actions can tell they do not have a conscience, but it's over for you. It's over. You have nowhere to hide. It's over. This is why I took my time to say I need to make sure everyone can hear about this sanction thing so we can move on. Everyone should be educated and understand that we are just being played. Lies daily, lies outside. We cannot take it anymore. We are saying no, enough is just enough. Now we are much aware of what's going on. I want to know what will be your next excuse. Now that everyone knows that there is corruption, is a problem, your accounts are being frozen, the money that you stuff in foreign lands, and we've been talking about this, they're going to be frozen. It's sad. Evil people, satanic, wickedness, devilish. It is what it is. We're going to have to call you as you are. Because you have shown beyond reasonable doubt that you do not care about how people feel, how they think, and that we are human beings. And this world it's not a horror, man. We are simply visitors. All the things you're collecting, you're going to die and leave them 6 feet down. You'll be leaving all these things. Respect your brothers and respect your neighbors. It is very important. Now, Farah was like my last person, honestly, and that's all that I have for you today. At least share the video with everyone else. People need to understand with this sanction thing, it's simply a game. They're just being played. It's time for us to stand up and do what's right. Bring every Zimbabwean from north, south, east, west. Let's fix this country. Every liar, every thief, every corrupt person, some of them should be locked up where they belong. They are thieves. They must be locked up. May God bless you and may God bless Zimbabwe. I love you all so much. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, Now with Rumbi. Please rush in, subscribe to the channel. And also, for those that need to subscribe to this one, subscribe. turn on the notification button. Until next time, I love you and bye for now.